Greetings, YouTube. I found myself thinking about a playthrough I was watching done by Gopher. I think it was Enderall. And he'd been using a power which essentially is a grease spell. He just like throws this imaginary vial, much like the way alchemists can keep throwing bombs as long as they have a certain number of components on them or they have possessed the components. This ability can be used every so often and has a cooldown period. When you throw, it's a grease spell, and if it's a corporeal being that moves along the ground, if they hit the spot, they fall down, which then gives you the opportunity to go beat them silly while they're getting up, essentially rendering them incapable of defending themselves. Quite handy. That got me thinking about the use of magical, essentially landmines, which is what this is, which rolled into me thinking about power words or words of power, depends how you want to look at it. And looking at the core rules for Pathfinder, I have three words of power word: blind, power word kill, and power word stun, not world. Power if you can stun the entire world, that'd be a really high level spell. Um, and I don't remember ever using them a lot, which is bizarre because magical landmines could really be useful. I remember enjoying delayed fireball for that reason. In fact, the first time I ever used it, the party had never, the players, I don't think, had ever really encountered one. So I described it as this little red gem suspended in the air. And like one of them walked up and was like, book, book, when it went off. Well, I chuckled. They didn't chuckle so much. But I never used words of power a lot. Or, sorry, power words. And I was thinking, if I could come up with my own, hence the title of the video, it would be power word silence. Not blinding, not stunning, not killing, but silence. Now think about that for a second. It goes off and it fills an X volume of area effect, and if you're smart, it's slightly larger than the room they're in. So now the room is entirely encapsulated in a silence effect which has a duration, depending on the level of spell, caster, what have you. And no sound is now present in the room, which completely obliterates the common means of communication between people in the party. And unless they've already established some kind of hand signals, the kind of things that special forces use, which isn't a bad idea. And I would definitely encourage a party to develop something like that because that makes perfect sense. You know, like you could borrow the signs used by soldiers, by special forces, so you could then direct people silently. But if they haven't done this, the only way they're going to be able to pantomime it, and you make them pantomime it, you only let them speak about what their character is doing. Say, my character is doing this, but they can't send any information other than that to the people around them. And they can, it's charades time. It also means that spells that require a verbal component, they're out the window. So that really narrows the number of spells that your average casters are going to have available, because they may not have many spells on them ready to roll that are tailored to a silent encounter, because it doesn't happen all that often. Another thing you can do is that this silent spell then masks other things, say loud mechanical traps, a grate or a stone or something opening in the ceiling above them, so that they won't necessarily see what's going on. A mechanical automaton, some kind of clanking thing that was normally heard, especially in an underground environment or a castle or something, would be heard, 100 yards away. They don't hear it until it's in the room with them. It doesn't care about it being silent because its attacks are all, either melee or it has some kind of magical ability that doesn't require it, a flame or lightning. You get the point. But it's a built-in ability, so they don't have to actually cast it. So a verbal component isn't required. So I think that a power word silence would be really devastating and very simple in the sense that it isn't a new concept. The silence spell does exist, so this is just a modification of an existing ability into a slightly different form. You've turned it into a landmine, and now the group could very well be trapped in a room without an ability to communicate because a door could have closed behind them or a locked or a grate or something and they didn't hear it. And now they're being attacked by traps or by things from above or by some clanking automaton or even maybe live troops who have been trained for this particular environment. They go in there knowing they have certain tasks. Larry goes in there with doing an archery bit. Moe's out there with a pole arm, and Curly's in there waiting for an opportunity to wade in with devil short swords or something. So they've developed a tactic for this particular environment, as opposed to the player characters who could very well be deeply out of their depth. So what I'm proposing is tell me if you could create your own power word, and not something that is, nuclear blast or something, just something that falls into the category of the power range most spells have, most power words have. Why is that so hard to say? Power word. It's the W's. What would you come up with? And can you find uses from my suggestion of power word silence that I haven't thought of? Because, more minds on the topic is always better. So let's talk about power words and how they could be created and used.